Super excited, super pumped today. I've got somebody that I think you're going to be very surprised with, motivated perhaps, inspired. And the reason that I wanted to talk to this particular guest, and I'm keeping you in suspense, not even telling you who that their name is because one of the things that we work really hard at with Builders Business Black Belt is making our members' businesses profitable. And so we work very, very hard at ensuring that they've got business processes set up so they end up keeping some of what they earn, which bizarrely is a very rare concept in small business. And so we've been able to get some really extraordinary results over the last few years, particularly implementing Profit First into our members' businesses. We had our first. What's the fella's name who did the 4-minute mile? Anyway, don't worry about it. It'll come to me. He's like our guy in Profit First because he was the first one of our members to hit $1 million cash in his profit account. And everyone goes, "Whoa, that's fantastic," and it really is, you know. But it's really important, I think, to be able to understand what you need to do to transition at some stage in your life from working for your money to being able to get your money to start to support and work for you. And it's a great concept, but very few people do it. Very few people know how to do it. And so our very special guest today is someone who can guide us through the pathway, the obstacle course to be able to do that. And you would imagine if you were going to somebody who was going to give you some financial guidance and investment direction and so on, you'd be walking in the foyer to the set of lifts and going up a number of floors, going into a glass office, and the receptionist would meet you and walk into the appointment, and you'd be greeted by a tall, handsome person in a suit, a very expensive suit with a watch and all of that. And so if you're visualising that, I now want to introduce you to our very special guest. His name is Jackson Milan, and he looks nothing like that.
Surprise!
Surprise. And, I've been following, like we've known each other because we've got the same business coach, have had for a number of years, and I see you all over Facebook all of the time. I stalk you every day, what you're doing. And, he used to be driving around in a 4-wheel drive, living the dream, and now he's on the farm wrestling with snakes, cuddling cattle, all sorts of things. He's a good guy, and he's got a lot to share with us. So, Jackson, welcome to the podcast.
Mate, I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to sharing some value and challenging the status quo that most small business owners believe is the necessities of creating financial freedom, and we're going to simplify it and give them some actionable insights today. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I've got the remarkable notepad over here ready to start making notes myself. Just to kick off, how the hell did you ever get involved with what you were doing? Like, were you voted most likely to be doing this sort of stuff when you were at school?
Certainly not, mate. I was terrible at maths, to be fair. And where this whole story kind of comes full circle is that I was animal obsessed as a child. I actually wanted to be a vet. My first word was vet. Always had a connection with animals. And I went through my entire school career with that idea in my head. And had a harsh reality, probably year 9, where my teacher said, "Jackson, like, you're really bright. You've never really applied yourself. You're never going to get the marks to be able to get into university. Like, do you realize you need to get a UAI or what the young whippersnappers call these days, an ATAR of like 99.6 or whatever to get into the uni score?" And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to do that. That idea's gone. My parents were tradies. My dad had a number of different businesses: a waterproofing business, handyman business, renovation business, and my mum was a hairdresser. They're both incredibly hard workers. And they always said to me, "Jackson, to be successful in this world, you need to work hard for it." And they epitomized that. They worked 7 days a week for as long as I could possibly remember. But they never had much to show for it. So when I fell off my first trajectory of being a vet, I went to my dad. He was my first mentor. And I said, Dad, what am I going to do now? And he said, Jackson, if you want to make money in this world, you need to be surrounded by money. And I took that very literally. And seeing their journey and their difficulty around money, seeing that they were working for money as opposed to money working for them, I set out to try and break the catalyst and be a catalyst for change. So I started training to become a financial advisor. And I wanted to help people like my parents. And very quickly, I become very disheartened because the industry was built on helping two types of people. They were either wanting to work with people who are already independently wealthy and help them build more wealth, what they would refer to as a private wealth model, or on the other side, helping people like my parents by flogging them commission-based products that, quite frankly, they didn't need. And I hated it. I thought that it was a stark contrast to what I thought the industry would be, and I nearly threw in the towel. But as I nearly hung up my hat, I asked myself the question, if I was going to do this my way, how would I do it? And I decided to bin the term financial advisor and create what I call a wealth coach. And I designed an education-based syllabus that helped people like my parents with the fundamentals of money. And since then, I've helped my clients build over $2 billion in combined wealth, published a number of international best-selling books. I've built a $10 million business myself, and I've been able to do all of that whilst creating financial freedom at 33. And we spent a year traveling around Australia in a four-wheel drive, and then now we've got an animal sanctuary up in far north Queensland with over 100 animals. So it just goes to show that what you can do when you set your mind to something.
Yeah. I'd just really like to start at the start, the basics. And I know when I met Mike Michalowicz, author of Profit First, many moons ago, I was doing a podcast and I was interviewing authors, and I interviewed him with the Pumpkin Plan, which is a wicked book, by the way, how to grow pumpkins to the size of a small car, and the parallels between that and building a small business. And he contacted me some months later and said, I've got a new book coming out. It's called Profit First. Can I get back on to the podcast and promote it? And I said, absolutely. Bought a copy of the book, read it, was devastated because of my absolutely pathetically awful financial management up until that point. And I remember the day that the penny dropped about how much I didn't know, and I was in the podcast room, the studio, and back then our business was called Uncover Hidden Profits, and I had a big background banner behind me with Uncover Hidden Profits in 2-foot high letters, and I'm sitting underneath it reading this book going, holy shit, I don't even know what a profit is. Like, I just didn't, it was awful. But I like, it was an awful feeling to know how much I'd buggered it up until then, but since then, you know, I haven't veered off that track, and it's made a massive difference to our lives, and it's just been fantastic. But what do you find are the real basic fundamental errors in judgment, or perhaps errors in understanding, that most people have that are in my position, you know, just the average business owner, if you like, about their financial situation or possibilities? That is the thing that holds the majority of people back, so they're working for money forever.
Yeah, there's really three, Mick, and we see it all the time. Like, we've worked with thousands of clients of all shapes and sizes with all different businesses all around the world, and there's nothing unique. Like, we're not a special little snowflake. We all share things in common, and there's three common threads. One, most people don't have a plan when it comes to their money. Like, when we get into business, we're passionate about it, right? It is the be all and end all because it consumes so much of us. And the problem there becomes the fact that our business becomes the destination when it should be the vehicle. And actually more so, it becomes a baby and it becomes reliant on us. And it becomes this cash-eating monster, as our good friend Mike calls it, when it should be the profit-making machine. Because let's face it, right? We may be passionate about our business, whether it's a building business or a trade business, whatever it might be, but it's a means to an end. It is a wealth creation vehicle. It was there and it was created, and you got into it because you wanted freedom and flexibility. But for one reason or another, you've lost sight of that because you've got caught up in it. So we need to have a plan that is not only a plan outside of the business, but it needs to be what I call a three-dimensional plan. Because most wealth gurus create one-dimensional plans. They're like a horse with their blinders on. Like, Mick, just focus on one thing at a time. Buy your house, pay it off, send the kids to a good school, Go take some nice holidays. But like a horse with their blinders on, inevitably you've got focus on one thing, something comes out of the periphery and it competes for the same financial means, and you now need to make a scarcity-based choice. I, I hate to be abrupt, but fuck that. Like, I don't work so hard in my business,
Well said.
sacrifice and compromise to then have to make a scarcity-based choice. That is not an absence of means, that's an absence of planning. So let's work out how do we have our cake and eat it too. So then we can work out what our business needs to do to provide that quality of lifestyle without sacrifice and compromise. The second thing is no cash. Like, we know what we should be doing. Like, when you're a builder, you know that wealth is built in property. You know that smart people accumulate shares in the stock market. You know people put money into their superannuation to meet these concessional contribution caps. You know these things, but you just don't have the disposable cash in order to do it in the capacity that you know you should. So you leave chips on the table. And the third part is that's perpetuated due to lack of consistency. You're a roller coaster ride, right? You're going from one project to the next. You have all of these projects on the board, so you drop the ball with your BD. And then when all the projects are done and handed over, you go, oh shit, I don't have anything in the pipeline for the boys. And then because of this up and down, you don't feel that you have enough consistency or certainty to be able to plan. So this thing just perpetuates itself, and these three things go around in circles.
Just going back to that, the first one about I suppose it's a scarcity mindset.
Yes.
Like, how do we overcome that? Because my suspicion is it's not just a mindset about finances that people have scarcity about. It's kind of, if they're that kind of person, they're that kind of person, and there's scarcity of opportunity, and nothing ever goes my way, and no one in my family's ever done that, and I'm too short or I'm too tall or whatever. So how do you address that with the people you work with if a person's sort of fundamentally pessimistic and has that lack mentality or scarcity mentality? I suppose we can talk about it, but
yes,
you know, to be able to get them to change their behaviour and change their decisions about money, it's almost like they have to have a rewire their whole mindset, you know, about life, not just about money.
And here's the interesting thing. I have always been pretty good at connecting the dots, although I wasn't very strong at maths. Maths is not the fundamental principle of good advice and coaching, right? It is about understanding people and human behavior. But in my earlier days, when I was a little bit more naive, I remember working with these clients who had a lot of opportunity. They had really good household income, they had a great business, they had equity in their properties, all the right things. And I remember working tirelessly to design this holistic financial plan for them that spanned the next 20 years, that basically presupposed that they would be able to far surpass all of their goals if only they walked the plan, if only they implemented it. But to my frustration, we went through it, they signed it off, and then in step number one, they fucked it up. And I racked my brain. I wanted to grab them by the shoulders and shake them to say, what's wrong with you? Like, you can see how this gets you to where you want to go, but for one reason or another, you are your own worst enemy. And that's when I discovered that there are certain spender types, because let's break it down here, Mick. There's three factors that we all play by when it comes to working towards financial freedom. There's the tactics, right? Investing in the stock market, paying down your debt, maximizing your cash flow. These are the building blocks, right? Then there is the strategy, the roadmap. Let's call it the blueprint as such, right? Like, you would never try and build a house without the blueprint, right? You need the plans. And that tells you what tactics, what materials you need to put into play so you can do it efficiently and you can do it the right way. But the unspoken rule here is the operating system. It's the invisible part. And quite frankly, we all play by the same rules, the same tactics, the same strategies. So what makes a difference of results? It is the quality of the individual and their mindset. And it's not necessarily about changing that mindset, Mick. I think it's about having an understanding of your own intrinsic strengths, because we all have them, whether you believe it or not. And we also have intrinsic weaknesses. It's like trying to measure an elephant's ability to climb a tree. It's stupid. Like, you would never do that. Whereas when I have somebody who has a really pessimistic attitude on stock market investing, then why would I be trying to immerse them to go and convince them to put $500,000 into the stock market tomorrow? There are certain preconceived barriers and limiting beliefs there that we need to overcome. And by going against them without paying respect and homage to them is remiss, and we're asking ourselves to fail. So what I created in my first book was 7 spender types. And these 7 spender types allow you to understand what are your intrinsic strengths and weaknesses as an individual. And then how do we leverage the right strategies and tactics to get you to play to win? Like, let's skew the odds in your own favor. And then that's where we can really start getting some amazing results.
Mm. Yeah, the whole mindset around money is to me really, really fascinating. It's like going back to that story when I read Profit First again. I believed I knew what I was doing. And it turns out I absolutely didn't know what I was doing. And the key to being able to keep the money, instead of letting it all just go through my fingers, it was a mental and an emotional strategy. It wasn't an accounting. Like I had the accountant basically wrapped around the little finger. I was able to convince him that it was a good idea for me to have 2 Range Rovers on asset purchase, one to drive on the road and one to drive in the bush, because you don't want to sort of, mess that up.
Exactly.
And I could get him to agree to anything. I think anything was a good idea, but it was I had to change my mindset to be able to have the right decisions automatically. Is that sort of something that you talk about with what you do? Is how do I make the right decisions and they are my default decisions, rather than having to use bloody discipline, because we all suck at that, How do we set it up so I feel like doing it that way and it just happens to be the right way?
You absolutely nailed it, mate. Because here's the problem. The most traditional wealth creation strategies are built on manual intervention. Action is the outlier. And the problem is that most people are stuck in their default of inaction. And there's basically 7 core behavioral finance principles. And I don't want to go through all of them because it would take us all day, but there's 2 main ones that we encounter the most with all of our clients that we work with. One is loss aversion bias, whereby it's been scientifically proven that as a human being, we feel the emotion of a loss twice as significantly as the emotion of a gain. And this is where most people, they go, I know what I should be doing, but I just can't muster up the willpower to go and do it. And for this reason, it's because they haven't put twice as much effort into the future planning to justify the risk. So that's why they sit and do nothing. The second principle, the second bias is confirmation bias. As our good friend Confucius famously said back in the day, he who said he can and he who said he can't are both right.
Yeah.
We will always find a way to subconsciously justify our decision and our point of view. So if you believe that you can't do something, or something is too hard, or you are not a money person, that is the role that you will assume. So our whole entire system we call the wealth mastery machine. If we unpack that for a moment, like what is a machine, Mick? If you had to define a machine, how would you summarize it?
Well, I guess it's something that creates a consistent outcome. You turn it on and it goes ka-chunk, 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 and you get the teddy bear biscuit out the end, and they're all the same.
Bang on. And how many business owners do you think can explain their finances in that same way?
Not that many.
No, because they don't have the systems in place, the operating system that runs their finances. So therefore it's knee-jerk, it's emotional, it's an afterthought, and it will largely depend on their emotional state or their mindset on any particular day, which is likely it's too hard, we'll deal with it next month, next year, next decade, and then it never gets done. The idea of having this system is that it keeps it simple, it keeps it sustainable because we can stick to it, and that it is also scalable, because as you grow and scale your business, all of these systems should be able to grow and scale with your business. We refer to this as money muscle memory. It's like if I paint a picture here, Mick, let's say that you wanted to become an Olympic weightlifter, right? And you went to the gym and you tried to squat 300 kilos on the bar. What do you reckon would happen?
I'd probably leave part of my intestine on the floor, I'd imagine.
100%. You're going to do yourself a mischief, right? So the idea here is, sure, we might be able to get there, but if we start with all of that weight in the first go, we're setting ourselves up for failure. So let's just start with the bar. And we do some reps, we get the form right, we start building that money muscle memory, and then we start adding plates, right? We start adding resistance so we can build that up over time. Money is absolutely no different. And the problem we all have is because we feel like we're falling behind, we've all missed opportunities and sacrificed for our business. So we feel we need to play catch up, and we try and lift the 300 kilo bar. And we wonder why we hurt ourselves, why we stuff it up, why we find friction, when we should be starting at the opposite end of the spectrum and then building up momentum over time.
Yeah. I guess the thing that came to my mind when you're talking about that is the statistic of how, almost all people who win the lottery are worse off 5 years after they won it than what they were before they got the money. And I know that when you talk to people about even just implementing the profit first, and I want to get to your system in a minute, that so many people think, once the dust settles, once I get my shit together, then I'll start to do that. And I'm assuming that your advice with your system is as well, based on what you just said then, is yesterday was the best day to start. So I guess today's the second best. Let's go for that. And exactly. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. If we're just lifting the bar, it doesn't matter how many zeros.
Correct. Like I've had clients at like really polar opposite ends of the spectrum, Mick. Like I've had clients who have come to us that are on the verge of bankruptcy, that have been burning cash in their business at a rate of knots. And as a result of setting up these systems and creating that roadmap, reverse engineering into the plan, it was the rocket fuel that they needed, the clarity they needed to be able to sort their shit out and get themselves back on track. And then on the other end of the spectrum, just to illustrate that there's never a perfect time. One of my wealthiest clients who was wealthy on paper, he was a CEO and a founder of a SaaS business. It was worth over $100 million. He was a bit of a playboy, renting the beachfront mansions, driving the supercars, flying at the pointy end of the plane. He didn't have a dollar of wealth to his name outside of business. And then when we first started working together, we implemented his investment portfolio with $500 a month. And he laughed at me. He goes, Jackson, like I spend more than $500 at brunch on a Saturday. And I go, so you're not going to miss the money, right? And he goes, of course not. And then when we implemented it, and then month one, it was 500. Month two went to 2,000, then it went to 5,000, then went to 10,000, then to 50,000, then to 100,000, which was still a fraction of his income. But the idea is that was the actual principle of adding weights to the bar. He got addicted to it. He got excited about it, and the momentum picked up so quickly. Yeah. So it just goes to show, it doesn't matter where you are, you're just there to start.
Yeah. And again, every time you say something, my mind goes back to the past, some memory. And I remember reading Richest Man in Babylon, must have been back in the early 90s or whatever. 10% of every dollar you earn is yours to keep. Give it to a wise man. Its only purpose is to have children, all of that sort of stuff. And I started that first bank account then with the 10%. And you're exactly right. If you just get started, it's like crack cocaine, like it's addictive. You go and you find yourself starting to steal from yourself, going, I'm going to put 11% in, instead of and you feel like you're cheating on yourself or doing something. But I mean, you're doing at the absolute best thing you can for yourself. So you've just got to start. And like you said at the start, which is something I absolutely concur with, and I talk about it all of the time, is your own small business is just the best platform anyone can have to build freedom for both time and money. It very rarely works out for people, but that platform is the absolute best. And obviously what we're doing is endeavouring to help builders and trades-based businesses start to have profit in the first place.
I agree.
Once they've started to get profit, what are some of the dimensions? You said, you've got to have a multi-dimensional approach to investing. Tell us about what some of the dimensions are that you talk about and sort of unpack for your people.
Yes. So there's really three core pillars to it, mate. So the first part is defining. We need to get crystal clear on what that financial freedom is. And for our clients, we actually help them design a 20-year lifestyle and financial roadmap, which is pretty scary because most people don't even know what they're going to have for dinner tonight, right? But this once again, this comes back to that loss aversion bias, is that if we can muster up enough energy to be able to document what you want over the next 20 years, you're able to link your significance to your actions and activities every single day. I can reverse engineer every single one of those goals. The dream trip you wanted to take to Europe, the school that you want to send your kids to, the dream home that you want to renovate and have paid off over the next 5 years. I can link all of those things back to everything you do every day. And how much more motivation do you need? Then once we've got the defined piece right, we then need to create. So we need the cash flow operating system. We love Profit First. We think it's amazing. We also need something similar for the household. So we need to link the profit business in the business to your household cash flow. Because let's face it, we suffer from that cash flow creep. Money disappears through our fingers, particularly the more you make of it, right?
Yeah.
And then we need to have a system for turning that profit and surplus into personal wealth. And I keep this really simple, Nick. In my opinion, there are 3 ways to make money in this world. There is business. You need to maximize the profit, and you need to try and create a saleable asset. Because I personally believe every business can be sold.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Trade businesses, most lifestyle trade businesses aren't sold. And that is largely due to that confirmation bias because you've been told by old mate down the pub that you can't sell your trade business. Bullshit. We have had some of our highest sale multiples of EBITDA from trade businesses because it wasn't the goodwill they were selling, it was their system.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's the first thing you need to consider. Now, let's assume your business has no value. The 2 remaining ways you have to build wealth is property. We want to accumulate as much good quality blue chip property as you could possibly accumulate. And that might only mean 1 a year, 1 every 2 years, even 1 every 5 years. If we're buying good quality real estate, we know that it will perform very well over the course of the next 10, 15, 20 years plus. And then thirdly, we understand that property is great, but there are downsides. Expensive to get into and out of. It is illiquid. And in terms of the yield, the cash flow, if you want to create passive income, it's not the best asset class to do it. So then we want to accumulate stocks without having to stock pick. And what we do is we teach our clients the value of asset allocation, not stock picking. So we can use index funds and other investment vehicles that basically allow them to set their share market portfolios on autopilot, and they will take care of themselves and they will get them the average of whatever the market does. Because it is not timing the market that matters, it's time in the market. And if we can simplify it, then we remove the obstacles that are preventing you from getting in the first place.
Yeah. Listening to everything that you're saying there, my mind goes to coaching and all of the strange mindsets that people have around coaching. So we met in Black Belt, which is Taki Moore's coaching program. Taki is, in my view, the best business coach on the globe. Like he's just phenomenal. A great guy, incredibly smart, articulate, and it just like he's changed our business. And so we met there. So I tell people I've got a business coach who coaches business coaches. I've got Ron's is my podcast coach. So, I've been doing podcasting for probably 10 years now, and I got a podcast coach, and I got all sorts of coaches for things. And I just, when you're talking about all of the different, how to do the property and how to do the stocks and all of the different variations and things you got to think about, and my brain went straight to something that Taki taught us both a long time ago: always ask who, not how. And
yes.
And I was just thinking, I even my skin started to crawl a little bit when you're starting to talk about all of that stuff. And I'm going, oh shit, I'm just going to have to sit there and read all of that and understand all of that sort of stuff. And I just felt, no, I don't want to, and I suspect a lot of people do that, but they also are too tight ass to invest in somebody who's got a system, who's got a process, who's got the knowledge, who can just open up the pathway for them, and all they have to do is behave in a certain way, and they can even be told that, and it works. And so there's a couple of bits of resistance that people want to do it by buying a $30 book and not paying a coach. And learn it themselves, but when they get into that, it's all too hard, and so they don't do anything, I guess. So, what are your thoughts on my ramblings?
You hit the nail on the head, mate. Particularly when it comes to money, and the fundamental principle that we hold as a society is that we abdicate financial responsibility because we are not money people. I'm not a money person, which might be of a surprise to you. I have actually built all of these systems for people like me who do not want to spend every waking moment going through spreadsheets and managing their money and knowing every last red cent has gone. I have a million and one other things that I would prefer to do with my time and effort than do that. So the idea here is that our system takes you 30 minutes a month to manage once it is implemented. Now, the important thing is it's going to take time, and you're going to get the heebie-jeebies to start off with, because we're taking you from being unconsciously incompetent, ignorant bliss to now being consciously incompetent, which is one of the most terrible feelings in the world. But my fundamental belief is you cannot abdicate responsibility around your money, because no one will love your money as much as you do and care for it as much as you do. So our aim is to help you be trained to get into your financial driver's seat. And then if you choose to hire a chauffeur so you can sit in the passenger seat and just observe and scroll Facebook whilst they drive, then that's perfectly fine. But you need to have the ability to drive if you need to.
Yeah, you've got to take the personal responsibility. That is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Because it's you'll hear people say that all of the time. Someone gave me a tip, and they think that's a good tip. But if it doesn't turn out right, it's like they blame the person. It's like, dude,
Correct.
We've got to take some sort of personal responsibility for that. And I think finances is one. For a small business, and marketing would be the other, I'd say.
I agree.
You might not have to do the stuff, but you need to understand the principles behind it. And I suspect finance is exactly the same.
Exactly the same. We call it money and marketing. Those are the two things that you should not abdicate responsibility around. And to be fair, it's the same reason why we joined Black Belt, is because we weren't great at the marketing piece, and Taki's taught us all of that. And we tried to abdicate responsibility and we got shit results. And it was only when we got into our driver's seat with the marketing that things started to fall in place. And money is no different. The other factor here, Mick, and this is a little bit of an exercise for everyone kind of watching this, I'd love you to participate as well. I'd love you to squeeze your fist as hard as you possibly can. Now squeeze it a little bit harder. You had a bit more squeeze there, right?
I did.
Why didn't you squeeze that hard the first time?
I don't know.
This is the point. The value of a great coach is getting you that little bit of extra squeeze, right? It is this done with you attitude where they can teach you the systems, get you into the driver's seat, wrap their arm around you and tell you everything's going to be okay, and help you make those decisions and push a little bit harder when you need to, and take the foot off the accelerator when that's required as well. And this is where, when we start talking about money, and we all have so much anxiety and pressure and stress around it, because let's face it, it's why we're in business. We need to make sure that we make it a priority and we get the right support to simplify that trajectory.
My brain asks me, like, what are the first steps here? Like, you're a trades-based business. You're perhaps not even profitable at this stage. What are the first steps we do? Like, whether it's reaching out to you, or what happens if you're just listening to this conversation and you go, like I did when I read Profit First, I'm doing a really shit job at this.
Yes.
What's my first action? What should I do?
So we've simplified this, mate, because we're working with thousands of business owners. And to be fair, most of our clients are trades. We've been able to identify that there are 40 things that you need to be able to create financial freedom as a business owner. The scary thing, the average score is about 18 out of 40, meaning that most business owners are below average financially, which probably isn't a surprise. We've put it into a financial performance scorecard, and it takes you about 5 minutes to complete. I don't care what your score is. I don't care if it's 5 or if it's 35, but I guarantee you that there's a handful of things that you aren't doing on there right now that you probably didn't even realize. And they're going to become the low-hanging fruit that you can prioritize over the next 30, 60, or 90 days in order to improve your financial position. Now, this is progress over perfection, guys. I think one of the biggest issues here is we have this pressure of keeping up with the Joneses, right? We look over and see what old mate's doing in their business and their wealth. Just let's keep you in your own lane. Let's work out what we've got to do to improve your position, and let's focus on running the marathon and not do it at sprint pace. So we'll include a link, but if you just go to wealthhealthcheck.com.au, That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. Complete the scorecard. You also get access to all of my best-selling books and financial tools and calculators that'll help you improve that score pretty quick.
Yeah, cool. We will definitely put those links in the description and so on and so forth. One of the important things for me when I do this podcast, because we have some extraordinary guests like yourself that we have conversations with, and we talk about a lot of cool ideas and concepts and philosophies. But what I love to do is get to know a bit more about the person behind all of the concepts and so forth. So I've got a couple of questions that I always ask. You may have heard of some of them before, but just they're questions without notice, just to get a bit of a sense as to what you like, what you don't, what you gravitate to. But and this might be a bit of a weird question in your case, but if you weren't doing what you're doing now as an occupation, let's call it, what sort of a gig would you like to be doing? If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you love to do?
I'm kind of already doing it, Mick, which is a little bit of cheating. But as I mentioned, I always had this passion for animals. It was what my first career path that I chose to do. And we've now set up our animal sanctuary that's home to over 100 animals now. So I'd love to continue. I'd probably be doing that if I wasn't doing what I'm doing. But I'm already doing it in a part-time capacity, so it's kind of cheating.
So you end up being a bit of a bush vet as far as looking after the animals a bit?
Definitely, mate. We're up in far north Queensland. We're on 70 acres, surrounded by about 5,000 acres of World Heritage rainforest. So it's pretty wild out here. So we've seen some stuff, mate. You've seen all of the content that I've posted, and we've navigated a few tricky situations.
Yeah, the one that I cringed at most was I think there was a couple where one you were pulling a bloody python out of the roof or something like that. I thought, where did you learn to do that? And you seem to be so calm and still speaking to the camera and all of that sort of stuff. I reckon I'd be shitting myself. But very interesting.
It's all good fun, mate. You've got to entertain the viewers.
You certainly make it look like good fun. Second question, 3 parts, and you've probably heard this question before, but you're having a dinner party and you've got 3 vacant seats in your dinner party, and you're allowed to invite anybody from anywhere on the world, any time in history, living or dead. Who are the 3 people that you would put in your seats? And why?
Winston Churchill. I use a lot of Winston Churchill's quotes. I think he was a very wise man. I think he made some very tough decisions in a very tough time. Marcus Aurelius, really one of the kind of the forefathers of Stoicism. The ability for him to not only expand the Roman Empire to its peak, but also be a Stoic and write his memoirs is just hugely interesting to me. I'd probably then choose another. I'd actually like to bring our friend Taki along to that conversation, because Taki's a phenomenal facilitator of dialogue. So I would be very interested to see how he spins that conversation, and that would be an experience to say the least.
Well, if it happens, can you record it? Because I'd like to see the conversation between Winston Churchill and Taki. I think that would be a very, very interesting conversation. But
that'd be great.
Yeah, be a great dinner party. Mate, I'd really like to thank you for sharing your knowledge, and we will have the links to be able to reach out to you in the descriptions of this podcast, and I really, really encourage people to do so. Like to me, the one thing that has made the biggest difference to our lives is having someone in that financial corner, having someone in the podcast corner, having someone in the business coaching corner, and it's like we've run into so many people that felt that they really, like myself, felt like that they really had a handle on their finances. But like you just did the whole fist squeezing thing, it's like there are so many things that you could do better, and I am going to be doing that health check, because I'm absolutely curious now about the 40 bloody things. There's 40 of them. It's like normally people go, there's 3 things you got to do to be successful. Jackson comes out and goes, there's 40 things. So I need a list. I need a checklist. And I suspect that I'm going to need guidance and support to be able to implement those 40 things as well. And I'd love anybody else watching this or listening to this podcast to jump in there, and because there is nothing more exciting once you get up. You know, you mentioned the Maslow's learning ladder when you're unconsciously incompetent, and then the step between unconscious incompetent and conscious competent is a step called conscious incompetent. Which is that's the ugly bit, where you go from ignorant bliss, where, you know, I thought I was doing all right, I just didn't know that I was awful, and then you discover you're awful. And that's kind of the danger zone, where you've got to be able to move through that really quickly with guidance, help, support, systems, processes, coach, to get to that conscious competent. Like when you're driving a car, you're driving the car, but you've got to concentrate on everything. And you got to keep doing that until you get to that unconscious competent, where you can drive the car whilst putting on your lipstick and doing your hair.
Exactly.
But yeah, I can't encourage people enough to reach out and get in contact with you, to be able to have that somebody in their corner. Because one of the things that I was super pumped about having this conversation is that, having done this for so long, the worst, you know, and dealing with people's problems and you know, the emotional challenges of running a business and just participating in life, is it seems that financial stress is probably the worst stress that there is, because it seems to compound or amplify the consequences of every other problem that you've got. If you've got a health problem or a relationship problem or a work problem or something like that, and you've got financial problems, it doubles and triples and quadruples, it seems, the pressure and all those other problems, versus if we can just get rid of that financial problem, a lot of those other problems disappear, or at least dissipate to some degree. Is that something you'd agree with?
I agree with you wholeheartedly, mate. The big shift here is to going from that financial anxiety to enjoying the journey. Like, this doesn't need to be difficult. It doesn't need to cause you anxiety or stress. And it's just with having these simple systems and that support that we can actually get you back to enjoying it, as opposed to just kind of grinding away and trying to outwork and outpace everyone else. And that's no fun. And I think that really hit home for me when my old man was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer at 66 and passed away shortly thereafter. After working his entire life, 60-hour weeks, working 7 days, and hoping that he would be able to reap the rewards of all of that hard work from 65 onwards and live the dream. And that dream was taken away from him. Yeah. So my motto is live for today and plan for tomorrow. Yeah. We should be able to enjoy that journey, and it's a lot closer than you might think.
Yeah, I can't agree enough. It concerns me sometimes, like even with all of the entrepreneurial people that we hang around with in Black Belt, you know, I often come across somebody and they scare me a little bit, because like they just so, I guess workaholic is the phrase. Like they're doing really well financially. They drive the nice car, they got the nice house, they travel all over the place, but their workload frightens me. and it's like, I think I might have picked it up from Tim Ferriss or whatever, 4-hour work week. It's like, have mini retirements, you know, and I've listened to him and I've tried to do that with our business. And, you know, how I work now is I basically go on holidays every week, you know, and sort of by Wednesday afternoon, I start my holiday and then finish my holiday Sunday and come back to work again. And the beauty of it is you really enjoy work. You want to come back. You know, it's not this thing that's just driving you down and down and down. And at some distant place in the future, you're going to have this rest where you can play golf whenever you want to and go sailing whenever you want to and all of that sort of stuff. And I think what you're saying is you can do that now.
Correct. Yeah,
and
I think you're doing it
perhaps
the
you
right way,
should do
mate.
it now.
Yes. Those workaholics, those people who are subscribed to that hustle movement, it's going to come full circle. And I've seen it time and time again. They burn out, they fall off the wagon, and in many cases, they end up doing more harm than good. I'm a big believer of setting a pace that you can do for the rest of your life so you never need to retire. I subscribe to a framework that I call the F4. You need a business that produces at least 400 grand a year in profit, allows you to work 4 days a week and 44 weeks a year, and fast tracks your way to $4 million in net wealth. If you can achieve those 4 fours, then you live in the dream.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Can't wait to get into that list of 40 and get started. So, mate, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your knowledge and sharing that with everybody listening to the Toolshed podcast. And hopefully we'll be getting you back and having another conversation with you in the not too distant future.
Love to, mate. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Links in the description. Please click the link. Go do the wealth check. I'll see you there. I'll be on the link myself and working all that stuff out, because this sort of thing you can't know enough about. And it's like Jackson said, it's not just about the accumulation, and it's not just about the money. It's about what you can do with it and how it can change your life now rather than at some stage in the future when you're either too old and infirm or ill or lonely or whatever to enjoy what you thought you were going to enjoy by working so hard. So let's jump onto that. Thanks for listening to the Toolshed podcast. We will be back again before you know it with another episode of the Toolshed. I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. Bye for now.